Again, thanks everyone so much for joining us today. This is the second in a monthly webinar series that we're doing, and we're so excited to be highlighting different organizations that are working on fraud across Wisconsin. So today I'm excited to have Michelle Reinen from the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection, which is kind of a mouthful, so you might just hear me call it DATCP from here out. But they do a lot of great work in Wisconsin, and rather than me trying to describe everything, I'm going to hand it over to Michelle. So tell us more about what DATCP does.
Well, thank you for having me, Courtney, and welcome everyone. I'm glad you were able to make time today to be part of this session. And DATCP, yeah, that's what we call it too, Wisconsin's Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection. It's a state agency, and we're primarily located in Madison. And obviously the beginning words, Department of Agriculture, there's many facets to the agency that deal and live in all the things that consumers consume and do related to agriculture, and things you may not think of that are agriculture. However, I live in the second part of that agency title, which is Trade and Consumer Protection, primarily the consumer protection aspect, and that's what I'll be talking about today. The Bureau of Consumer Protection is the state's primary consumer protection agency, responsible for enforcing the state's consumer protection laws. So anything from someone's landlord-tenant rental rights to fixing your automobile to the state's do not call list, and whether or not you get mailers that say that you could go get some government document records, and here's how much they cost. There's laws about that as well. Billing practices, deception, fraud, and keeping the marketplace balanced. We are here to ensure consumers' rights are protected and that there is a balanced marketplace. So very broad scope of things that we deal with, and consumers and businesses that we interact with. And one of the things we do that I just want to go through with is, kind of how we do that work and how we're made up as well, if that's all right with you.
Yeah.
So we're a small bureau in the concept of we are statewide. It's about 35 employees, but we have a consumer protection hotline, and that's one of the resources that you'll send out after the session. Consumers can call the consumer protection hotline and check out a business before they engage in any business practice with them. They can call and say, hey, I got this mailer. Is this legitimate? This is why I think it's funny. Or what are my rights, as it relates to home improvement practices, something that we do. It can be a broad spectrum, and our hotline will deal with that and provide you information and send you out materials. You can also go to our website and see the hundreds of fact sheets that we have and get access to the laws through that. And our information education unit are the staff that deal with that consumer protection hotline. Live people answering the phone. It does have prompts. You can do some self-service and you can call it after hours, but we do have live people answering those phone calls. The other thing we do is mediate complaints. So a consumer may be involved with a business and they've been interacting and they're not getting anywhere and trying to resolve the issue. And so they may file a complaint with consumer protection, and we will get in contact with the business and let them know about the complaint by sending them a copy and asking them for a response. So we do that complaint mediation. And then we're also looking at it to see if we think it may violate any of those laws we enforce. And then that takes us to the next unit, that investigation unit, where we have staff that if we see patterns, if we see egregious behavior, if we see new trends popping up, our investigation staff are going to take a look at that, do that investigation. And if we find something worthy of referral, we're going to send that to the Department of Justice or district attorney for a potential enforcement action or prosecution. And when I say worthy, I mean, is there evidence and proof and violations of our law in that concept? It doesn't mean that consumers may not have been harmed. It just might be a regulatory factor there. So certainly lots going on. And then our final area that kind of all the prongs that we have, education. We have staff that go out and do presentations, do webinars, Talk to consumers, because the best protection we have is information and education, and that upfront tools and tips that consumers can use to identify issues. So this is part of that.
Awesome. Yeah. So you guys cover a lot of ground, and I know we're going to get into specifically some imposter scams in a minute, but I just want to ask quickly, because you mentioned the do not call list, and it's something I get questions a lot about, which is, you know, I'm on the do not call list. How are scammers still able to call me? So I just wanted to, because I know we'll get into it later, want to do a quick debrief beforehand. How does the do not call list work, and why can I still get scam calls when I'm signed up to it?
I'm really glad you asked that question. So the state do not call program went into place in the early 2000s, I believe 2003. And if you think back 20 years ago now, you would receive phone calls in the middle of dinner with individuals trying to sell you something, whether it be vacuum cleaners or windows or magazines or whatever it was. But they were trying to give you a call and sell you something over the phone, and consumers didn't want to receive that. So the legislature put the do not call list in place. Consumers could actively sign up and put their phone number on a list and say, do not call me, you're not authorized to. The national government did the same thing. Some changes to that as to where you register your phone number, and that you do not have to renew your phone number once it's on the list now. It is permanent. And it's your residential phone number. So it could be your landline or your cell phone, or both if you have them, or all 4 cell phones for your house, whatever it is, but you can get those registered. The state law is still in place. It still works for that same purpose. Businesses cannot call you if you are on the do not call list and try and sell you something. There's our exemptions. A cell phone business and that business owner can call you. If you are currently engaged in business with someone, they may be authorized to call you. And if you're a charity or not-for-profit, or political phone calls, those can happen. Now there's this whole other group of phone calls now in the last, I'd say 5-10 years or so, that have cropped up. And there's all this new technology as well, but those aren't telemarketers, people trying to sell you something. These are scammers. These are auto dialers. These are robocalls, robots calling you or trying to connect with a message, and they are trying to steal your information or get your money, or both. And the do not call list isn't about that. It doesn't prevent that. That's just fraud. That is a scam. And so that is hard to combat. There's been federal legislation where phone providers can now try and block those calls using different authentication protocol, and it gets very technical. So you might see on your cell phone some advancements where scam likely will pop up now. You can download apps to help block using blacklists, if you will, of phone numbers. But these things are changing. They're using tricks called spoofing, misrepresenting the phone number and that identification on your caller ID to not be trusted. And so that's a whole nother group. We want consumers to still report them because we work with the Federal Trade Commission and other federal partners to try and break those down. And I think it was in 2017, there was a huge set of phone rings, if you will, phone centers in India that were cracked down with the IRS imposter scam, which I know we will talk about today in more detail. But it's those kinds of frauds that we're working very hard to try and break down, but they're not covered by do not call.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly cover that because, like I said, I know I get questions about it all of the time. And I also kind of explain it to people as like, you know, the do not call list regulates, like you mentioned, businesses, like law-abiding businesses. These scammers and robocalls are orchestrated by criminals. They don't really care if there's a rule. They're not supposed to call you. So the do not call list does still work. It's just like you said, I wanted to make it clear the ways in which that is working. So great. So you mentioned the imposter scam. So I want to get into that stuff now because I know that's, I don't want to say the exciting part or the interesting part, but it is kind of what we're here to talk about today. So explain to me, what is an imposter scam?
Well, an imposter scam is right there in the name. It is someone, a person or a group of people impersonating. They are pretending to be something well-known and trusted. And so there are different kinds of imposter scams: government, tech support, utilities. And their names somewhat describe what the impersonation is, but a baseline imposter scam is when a fraudster, a scammer, a con artist, a group of criminals, whatever term you want to use, is pretending to be something they are not in an effort to get your money or your personal information, or both.
Great. And I know you listed kind of a few there, but before we get into some specific examples, how are these scammers like typically reaching consumers, or how are people, I guess, being exposed to this stuff?
They are using all the technology. They are using old school and new school technology, certainly, whatever works. The way that we see it happen most often is by telephone. Still the good old fashioned telephone, again, whether it be your smartphone or a landline, they are contacting you through the phone, and people are picking up because it's quick, it's instant, there isn't time to think. But yet they are also doing all sorts of other things. They are creating fake websites. And some ways they do that is by changing the extension on the end. Think of the Red Cross, just as an example. They could be a .org. However, an imposter will just try and create confusion and maybe create it as a .com, or they'll make it a misspelling. Instead of Red Cross, it's Red Cross and the O is a 0. Just someone, typo. They look at it quick. Oh yeah, that's the website. Click the link. So they're certainly creating and reaching you through the website path. Emails. They're reaching out to you with disguises and being imposters in the email. Your text messages, certainly they're sending you links by text message. And then social media. Let's not forget that. They're certainly reaching out to you through all the most popular social media platforms. And then finally, good old-fashioned mail. They're sending you letters and it's not really who you think it's coming from. So any form, any technology, they're making their efforts to reach you.
And it's upsetting because it's almost impossible to avoid them, because they are using every single way they can to reach people. So I know you've kind of touched on a few, but what are some of the specific examples of maybe the most common ones that we see in Wisconsin?
So one of the most common and most popular in Wisconsin is government imposter scams, but more specifically, when I say government imposter scam, Social Security Administration and or Medicare reaching out to you. It's not really Social Security Administration calling you saying that there's a problem with your account, and if you don't verify your number, they're going to deactivate your benefits or discontinue them. The Social Security doesn't do blanket mass broad phone calls. An agent will return a phone call if you reach out, but they don't ask you to verify and confirm information or threaten you. And so that's one of the most popular happening. And then we also have utility. That actually happens pretty seasonally. And an example of a utility imposter scam is, let's just say, because we're both in Madison, that Madison Gas and Electric reaches out to you, or maybe Alliant Energy reaches out to you with a phone call and says you're delinquent in your bills and we're going to disconnect your utilities. We're coming out, the truck's on the way, here's the work order number, go ahead, pay right now, and then we'll stop the truck. But that's a very common one that we see at different peaks of the seasons when people would be very threatened by a utility disconnection. And that's not at all how the system works, but you can see in there again, that common thread of them reaching out. It's a trusted entity. Another popular one that actually really takes advantage of consumers who are aging, if you will, is a romance scam. There are a number of youth impacted by a romance scam imposter. However, as it relates to the amount of money lost, the romance imposter scam hits our older consumers the worst, in that is when you meet somebody online, but it's not really who you think it is. It's not who you've formed this emotional connection. However, it's someone who has set up multiple profiles. They aren't just dedicated to you. Their situation that they talk about needing money for, whether it be legal help, medical bills, travel to come meet you, or a business venture, doesn't really exist. And this scam continues on and on and on because of the emotional connection and the lies that they're able to really just continue on through your constant contact.
Yeah, and I will say, especially with the romance scams, I feel like there is a tendency for people to kind of say, I can't believe they fell for that. Why would you send so much money? And so I just want to quickly say, these people are professional criminals. They do a very good job at being believable when they're forming these connections that you're talking about. And it's just unbelievable the lengths that they'll go to and the amount of time they'll put into getting you to believe them, and it's through no fault of the person that this is happening to. So and I will just quickly say too, if anybody is using streaming services, there was recently a documentary called The Tinder Swindler, which was all about romance scams. And this was, these were not old people who were victimized by this man. So it can happen to anyone. And if you're interested in that, I would check it out. I know some people who have watched it have then realized, like, oh my God, this is what is happening to me. So that's another way. If you're like, oh, I'm not really into, being talked at about some of this stuff, you can watch that documentary and learn all about that. Okay, so those are kind of some of the three biggest ones you see. And I know you've kind of mentioned some of the things to look out for, but specifically, are there any warning signs or red flags that you can look out for where you could identify this kind of stuff?
Yeah, so one we didn't talk about that I'm just going to mention, grandparent scam or friends or family. One warning sign to that scam is when they ask you to keep information a secret and not share this contact with anyone else in your family or your friend network. That is a big thing. If there are excuses as to why someone sounds different and they say that they are your grandson, oh, but my nose is plugged, or I got punched in the nose and it's broken. Well, okay, that's a good excuse, not at all. But the big flags, urgency, you have to act now. You don't get to hang up and get back to them later. You have to give the information now, or give your bank account or credit card number right now. Threats, the utility scam, the threat of disconnection. If you don't deal with it right now, you're going to lose service. You're going to lose those benefits from Social Security Administration. If when they are calling you out of the blue and you've never made contact with them, a prize notice imposter scam, you need to verify or confirm information in order to get your prize. That again is going to be a red flag. Or if you need to make payment right away and they want the payment, not that credit card that has protection, they want you to give them a gift card. Run up to the store, get a bunch of $500 gift cards and read me the numbers, or pay by cryptocurrency, or wire them money. All of that would be lost instantly. It's not trackable. Those are all really big red flags that whatever you're engaging in isn't legitimate.
And I just wanted to ask quickly with the gift card aspect, because obviously people have to go somewhere to buy these gift cards. Is DATCP doing anything on the retailer side to kind of address this as well?
Yeah, we've been working and partnering with different retailers, organizations, and certainly any consumer can help us with this. But we created stickers for the point of sale that is, stop gift card scams, that just reminds people at that instant that you're making the purchase of, why are you purchasing this? Is it a gift, or are you responding to a phone call? Are you trying to pay a bill with this gift card, or is it a birthday present? But they're little point of sale stickers, and certainly we want retailers to put them out at those big kiosks, just to serve as a reminder, because again, as you said earlier, these individuals are professionals. They are skilled in their schemes, and they really play to your emotions and threats, and try and get you off kilter with your everyday normal thinking pattern with those ploys that they use. So certainly having a reminder when you're about to make that purchase can just bring you back to that stop, think, and react situation. And that's the purpose of the sticker. So if anyone wants to help ask a retailer in your neighborhood or your community, certainly call DATCP and we can send you some of those.
Awesome. I just know you guys do, like I said, so much work, and it's good to see you're kind of attacking problems in as many ways as you can. So I just wanted people to be aware, because I think sometimes there's a conception of like, there's all these problems and nobody's doing anything to fix them, and everyone's working really hard to try to address these. So I appreciate that program you guys have. I do see we have a question from an attendee, and I'm going to come back to that at the end, because it's kind of about some prevention aspects. And I want to go through first, we've talked about kind of how they work, how you can spot them. So if you find yourself in this kind of situation where you think, oh, this might be an imposter scam, what should you do?
The best thing to do is disengage. If you've answered the phone, hang it up. If you are reading the letter, rip it up. No, get disengaged from it. Now, if you have engaged in some way, take some notes while you're still thinking about it. What information have you provided? Don't panic. Just write down what information you provided, and that's going to help map out what you need to do next. If you've given a bank account, then you're going to want to contact your bank and try and stop any transaction, or have them put a freeze on things, maybe change an account number. If you've given a social security number, if you don't have a security freeze on your credit report, that is something you will likely want to go out and do, or at least put a fraud alert on. And we have all this information on our website, so you can access how to do these things. But that are the basics of again, kind of unweaving the web of the engagement that you've had. If you if you've just engaged but you didn't give any personal information, hang up, and no more phone calls are likely coming, because now they're going to say, okay, you've engaged. So be prepared to not answer the phone. Don't trust the caller ID, but be hanging up on individuals as well. And if you have the resources, change your phone number, but that's a very difficult thing for people to do when you've had it for 20, 30, 40 years.
Definitely. And I know whenever I'm out in the community, I tell people the same thing, like, just don't answer your phone, hang up right away. And I think it's difficult when people, especially in Wisconsin, we're so Midwest nice. We don't, we don't want to ignore the phone. We don't want to hang up on people. But I mean, as soon as you realize it's a scam, like, this is a criminal, you don't owe them anything. You don't have to listen to any sales pitches, like, just hang up right away. So, my best advice is always don't answer your phone. If they leave a message, call them back. If they don't, ignore it. So
I think I've heard it said very well by someone that was from AARP, is give yourself permission to hang up. It is okay. It is not a ding on your Midwestern values or kindness. Like you said, this is a criminal on the other end of the line. We don't need to be polite.
Right, exactly. Okay, so we talked about if you do give information, kind of going to your financial institutions and freezing your credit. But there is also this element of reporting or looking for some kind of follow-up and resolution. So if something happens, where's the best place for people to go? Is it always going to be DATCP, or any insight you can provide there.
So DATCP certainly wants you to report the complaint to us, especially if it's a phone number. So we share our information with federal partners in other states. And we don't just look at this as a local or regional or statewide issue. We know it's a national and international issue. So we are sharing information. So definitely report the incident to us. If it's something where you have paid money, maybe to a tech support scam, where they say that you have ongoing monthly services and you have an ongoing monthly charge now, certainly file that complaint, because through mediation, you're making regular payments. There's something for us to track there. However, if you feel threatened, if you feel harmed, if there is a financial loss that's significant, it's important to go to local law enforcement. They may say, oh, it's just a scam, that money's gone. That may be true, still report to DATCP. But if you feel physically threatened where someone says they are coming and you think that's legitimate, it's really important that law enforcement, your local law enforcement, be contacted.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people get overwhelmed because there are a number of organizations and entities kind of working in this fraud prevention space. So, you know, just know that if you reach out to DATCP or you reach out to AARP, you know, and there's maybe an organization that can also provide more assistance, we will make sure you get connected with whoever it will be that will be able to, you know, kind of follow up on some of these issues. But I just really want to emphasize that reporting and reaching out is so important so that we have an idea of what's going on. And, you know, maybe there won't be a satisfying resolution, but there could be. And if you never reach out, nothing's ever going to get fixed. So don't ever be afraid to reach out. I know there's sometimes feelings of shame that go with it too, but again, this is not your fault that this stuff is happening, and everyone just wants to help. So
your story can help prevent it from happening to someone else too. So important.
Very. That kind of comes to the end of the questions I have right now. So I want to go to, first of all, I want to do a quick reminder for everyone. You can put your questions in the chat or the Q&A box. This is going to be recorded and you will get an email with the recording and the resources in the follow-up. But if you're thinking of questions right now, feel free to drop them in the chat. So one of the questions that we got is about, Reed has mentioned he has frozen his credit, which is something you mentioned, which is super effective, but are there other steps that might also be effective? You know, there's like password generation and storage kind of programs out there. Do you recommend any of that kind of stuff, or what steps can you take beyond freezing credit?
Yeah, there's lots of different steps. So certainly changing your password if you've engaged through technology and you think that they've gained access to your information, you can update and change all your passwords. Use two-factor authentication as often as you can for the really secure things like your bank account information, or if you go look at your Social Security statement online and they offer that, doing the double safeguard, even two-factor authentication to your email. And there are plenty of password managers out there because it's hard to keep up and track all of that. The only thing I ever get concerned with password managers is who is behind the storage and how are they protecting your information, and how are you securing the device that has the password manager on it? Are you locking that device so that if you lose your phone, everyone doesn't have access to all your passwords type situation? So how is that secure? Kind of like locking the house with the deadbolt type situation. But there, on your credit card, you can certainly put fraud alerts. In the banks have those, and again, your Social Security number, but many of those financial based have ways to protect. As it relates to medical, like insurance aspects, be paying attention and looking at your explanation of benefits. And if you see anything that's suspicious there or inaccurate, responding right away is your best tool to combat things and be proactive in minimizing any damage there, because people could get access to your medical information.
Great. I know we kind of talked a little bit, this is not a guest question, I just thought of this while you were talking. I know we talked a little bit about being able to spoof caller ID so they can make it look like it's a local call or, like it is Social Security calling. And you mentioned that there's some technical stuff going on behind the scenes, but do you see any progress coming down the line where we can stop these? Whereas, I know you kind of mentioned they're marked as spam sometimes now, but is there any way possibly that these could ever stop, or is this just kind of going to be something people should get used to?
Yeah, I think people need to get used to not trusting their caller ID because misrepresenting the caller ID is not a legal activity as it is, but there's technology that allows for it. And there's so many different layers or levels of spoofing. There's general misrepresentation. There's neighbor spoofing where they make it look like it's coming from your area code or somewhere in your community. And then there is mirror spoofing where it's your own phone number that's calling you. And that one's always, really gets people to answer because it's so, it's so scary. How am I calling myself? It's so suspicious. But I think in that regards, we need to get used to it. Now, the technology advancements that we're having are the connection, allowing and authorizing that call to go through. It's the Traced Act. I believe it was signed in December of 2019. And that requires telephone providers or carriers to authenticate phone numbers back to their phone number and origins, and they can block those. But for that, they were very concerned in doing that because they didn't want emergency calls to not go through, and they didn't want to be the cause for that. Is the very simplicity of it. But now they've had technology advancements. However, if you still just have a traditional landline, that technology is older. And so you might not be seeing the same advancements. So you can certainly reach out to your provider and ask what they're doing to help block these scam calls, and what tools can you put in place that they're offering to you. Because depending upon who your provider is, everyone's seeing kind of a different result there.
Awesome. I'm going to, we're kind of running a little bit out of time, so I just wanted to quickly mention some AARP resources. So Michelle, this is kind of a heads up for you to think about if there's anything else you want to cover when I'm done with this, anything we might have missed. So I'm just going to quickly let everyone know AARP Fraud Watch Network is a free program for everyone. And we do a lot of education like DATCP. We try to reach out to people and get this information out here. And we work a lot with DATCP and Senior Medicare Patrol and organizations like that. And we have a website that has all kinds of articles about different kinds of scams. We have a podcast if you enjoy listening to podcasts. We'll have articles about trending scams. So Michelle was mentioning some things are kind of cyclical, where we'll see upticks in utility scams kind of in the winter or when it gets really hot. So when those kinds of things bubble up more often, you'll see more about that on our website. So like I said, it's a free resource available for everyone if you're a member or not, because we do recognize also anyone of any age can be scammed. And in fact, data shows us that young people are getting scammed more often. It's just older populations are losing more money when they do get scammed. So if you were listening today and you were kind of like, I already knew all of this, first of all, awesome. Second of all, make sure you're talking to the younger people in your life and talking to your friends and colleagues about that stuff. And I do want to mention we have free online support groups because we recognize, there a lot of the times there's this financial loss, but the emotional impact cannot be overstated with some of these things. It is really detrimental and kind of shakes people when this stuff happens. So we want to address that kind of stuff as well. So like I said, I will drop our website in the chat today. It will also be in the email you get after this. And one last thing, we have volunteers who do presentations in communities as well. So if you're ever interested, you can reach out to me and we will come out and talk to you guys about this kind of stuff. So Michelle, I know we covered a lot of ground today, and yet it feels like we could talk about all of this stuff for another few hours because these are so pervasive and popular and they have different twists. So with that in mind, I want to ask you, is there anything we didn't cover today that you would like people to know about?
I think the one thing that I can leave people with is our website. You've posted it a number of times, and I know that will go out in the email, but we have a senior guide, a Wisconsin senior guide. We're creating a consumer guide because, as you said, everyone is being impacted by these scams. It's just our older consumers have, in some cases, more reserves, and those scammers are able to get at those. And so they're targeted for that very reason. So everything we've talked about is in that guide. It's in our fact sheets and in more detail. So there's more tips and more red flags that you can look at in that material. And again, we could talk all day about many other topics. So certainly reach out if you have a community group where you want us to come out and talk, or in partnership, because we've had a great collaboration for many years together with AARP and have enjoyed that. And thank you for allowing us to be part of this conversation today.
Yeah, it's always great to chat with you or anyone from DATCP because you guys are often the first point of contact for people when it comes to fraud and scams. So thank you so much for all of the work that you do. And yeah, if you ever want to see us in your communities, make sure you check that follow-up email. And with that, I will say thanks everyone for joining us today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.